Joining us on set with the key takeaways, David Seigerman, Managing Director at BMO Capital Markets. Evan, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. Glad to be here.
Is the enthusiasm still as robust as it has been?
The energy in the room a few blocks north was incredible today. It was jam-packed. People were really excited to be here. The CBO news did not dampen the mood. A lot of questions, a lot of conversations, and I think we're really working to figure out how to get patients access to these drugs. That's the key question that we're trying to unpack here.
Where do you stand on Lilly and Novo in terms of how they're valued right now and how we are thinking about that total addressable market that they may be addressing? I mean, once upon a time it was, how many people are, struggling with obesity times by how much the drug costs, which is not the case when you consider insurance and access questions.
There's so many questions there. So it's funny because I looked at a note from mid-2022 looking when the first data was released. My peak sales are $14 billion. Clearly a lot higher now. We're at about $150 billion for the entire class. I cover Lilly, so I think that shares still have room to run. A lot of enthusiasm around the weight loss space, and I think there's still momentum. Don't cover Novo, but clearly the other key competitor in the duopoly, and we think that both can coexist for a while.
So, Evan, drop us also into, the broader ecosystem and some of the medical device players. I mean, there's a lot of different ways to attack this. And at different times in this trade, we've seen the market overreact. And I won't ask you to comment on Hershey's and Coca-Cola and Fritos. But I guess I'm just trying to really put some, there are companies out there that are still beaten up by the headlines. Should they be, and pick which ones you think?
Well, I think that there's a few things. One, like the sleep apnea companies, ResMed, we're going to get some data from Lilly's trial coming up soon. I think sleep apnea is a complex disease, a complex condition. Clearly, obesity is a component of it. That was said at our summit today. But I don't know if that necessarily tanks the sleep apnea market here. Other things like glucose monitoring, that all still exists. People are going to be really interested in their health and really interested in monitoring their biostatistics. So there may be a shift, but it's not going to be that seismic.
We know Lilly, we know Novo. What other companies in your universe should we be focused on that we're not?
Structure Therapeutics, oral small molecule targeting GLP-1, solves a lot of potentially the access issues. It's a lot easier to manufacture, can get a pill to a lot more folks. Also, don't cover them, but look at companies like Altimmune, Viking, we had Terns, Scholar Rock. What's really interesting at our event, we weren't just talking about the weight loss. We're talking about the muscle loss component of the weight loss, which is huge. That is really critical because I think that's going to be the next part of the equation that we need to figure out.
And the big ones are already addressing that in terms of other combinations.
Yes.
The next generation of GLP-1, which also fights that part of it. When will we see that?
So it's still early because Lilly did an acquisition with Versanis to try to address this. Novo did an acquisition recently. Even companies like Regeneron. We think Regeneron is Eylea and Dupixent, but they have assets in development to deal with the muscle loss component of GLP-1s, and I think that's what's super interesting.
Evan, talk to us about the broader ecosystem, some of the names that we don't have the opportunity to cover. We've seen Ro.co on a telemedicine company here, like some of these ones that are distributing and treating and prescribing, that sort of thing. What are some things in the private markets that excite you?
So what's really interesting, at this event, we had a company called IntelliHealth, and what they're doing is trying to democratize access to care. One of the big issues is getting in to see an obesity medicine specialist. You can't get an appointment. It's a year-long waiting list. They're coming up with an online platform to get patients to clinicians quicker so that they can get access to that care. And it's not just getting a GLP-1. It's nutritional assistance. It's counseling on how to exercise. It's working through the side effect profile of these drugs. Because when you first start them, it's kind of nasty for some patients. So it's ensuring that these patients get care very quickly. So I'm really interested in that digital health component.
Some of the smaller names that you had mentioned are interesting, but what they lack is the capital to bring it to market. And so are there any smaller ones that are working now that have the capital, or do you see all of them as potential targets?
I think, listen, in small cap biotech, they're usually targets. Structure today, the CEO is, we're looking at partnerships now. They recognize that to get an oral small molecule targeting GLP-1 to the masses, it's going to take some heavy lifting and some capital.